Here comes another anime recommendation, boy dudes and boy dudettes. What's good? It's a boy dude, and today we're going to be reviewing Guilty Crown, a 2011 Japanese television series, anime produced by Productions IG, which aired on Fuji TV's program block from October 13, 2011. And what is this show all about? Well, the story revolves around Shu Oma, a high school boy who inadvertently obtains an ability called Power of the King that enables him to draw out items called voids from other people. He is then thrown into the conflict between a government organization known as the GHQ and a resistance organization called Funeral Parlor, which aims to restore Japan's independence from the GHQ. And in his process of doing this, Shu has to deal with the burden of his ability, which puts tremendous weight and pressure on him, and discovers mysteries and truths about people. And I'll leave it on there because I don't really want to go into this show too much, and because it'll be a spoiler. And this show is one of those TV shows where you just kind of have to just get into it and just not really expect much from it in a way. You just have to watch it and see, what it's about. And I also forgot to mention that the series was directed by Tetsuro Ariki. And if you don't know, this dude is the exact same guy who directed the legendary Death Note series, and you do see certain elements of his some of his flair in this show, mainly when it comes to facial expressions, and the eyes do feel similar to Death Note at times, and he does a really good job. And obviously Death Note has a lot of very quick, fast pacing movements, and it's really done in the animation. When you see some of the animation, when Shu's getting the voids out of people and he's doing his fang, and it looks so epic and it's really quick and awesome, and the animation is so damn stellar in a way. It's so glossy. It's a very glossy looking anime series in a way. It was also written by Hiroyuki Yoshihina and Ichiro Okochuki, who was the assistant, and the music was done by Hiroko Sawona. And I'm sorry I butchered your names, but they were the people who kind of wrote it, and I really do like the writing at times. It's mainly targeted for shonen, the demographic, but at times it doesn't really feel shonen. So far, this show has kind of received mixed critical reaction from critics and fans alike. People some people praise the reinvention of this kind of genre, but describe the plot as jumbled and continue the trend of the weak characters and cliches. I don't really agree with some of the critics' reception. Obviously it's mixed, so other people do like it. In my opinion, I'm going to give this show generally positive reviews. It's a pretty wild show, and let's just dive into it and talk about the good of the show. And the good, for me, is the main character himself, and that's Shu Ozuma. And he's in these type of shows, you can kind of call the show a shonen. It's more of an action dystopia political thriller in a way, but it does have a lot of shonen elements. You got this dude who's just isolating himself from people. He kind of feels insecure about himself. He hates himself, and he feels like he can't really talk to people, interact, and that really puts a dent on things. And then just one day he meets this girl, and he's kind of thrown into this situation where he has to obtain this power. And just talking about it, it immediately sounds like Code Geass, and the similarities between this show and Code Geass is very, very on the nose. There's a lot of elements that do feel more like Code Geass, but I feel like this show does certain things better than Geass. For one, the English acting is so much better. The dubbing of this show is amazing, and obviously Lelouch in that show is really great, and you understand what he's doing. But he kind of becomes a bit of a douche in a way. With this guy, I mean, this guy kind of comes across not that likable at times, like, despite him being the main character and despite him, like, obviously, like, trying to save the day and all that, there are moments where you kind of don't really side with this guy. He makes some decisions that do kind of, like, obviously at first he's kind of like insecure and he doesn't know what he's doing and you feel bad for him, but then as the show progresses and he starts to get more to his own, he makes kind of off on decisions, and you kind of don't really side with him at times, and I really did enjoy how we have a main character who, maybe your typical main character and you do like him, but he does have he has a lot of flaws, and you kind of feel bad for him because it's almost like he doesn't really have a choice at times, and people don't really give him much of a choice in a way, and you really, really feel for this dude in a way. In terms of when he's not like unlikable, is that, for example, I mean, I know this dude is sad and he has like, self-confidence and doesn't really believe in himself, but I feel like his distant connection with people makes him a jerk at times because he doesn't know how people will feel when he says certain things, and when he gets upset he will kind of like use people to make him feel better. For example, there's a moment where the dude is like feeling really downtrodden and just sad, and then he wants to like make out with this girl, and he's basically using this girl to like make him feel better in a way, and it's kind of sad. It upsets the girl, and it's like, whoa, this dude becomes a bit of a douche in a way, and I don't really like that, to be honest with you. Inori is also a really interesting character, and she's kind of this very famous pop star singer, as I said earlier on, and not all is what it seems to be with her. And obviously she's part of the Resistance funeral parlor with Guy, and what I like about her is just how, I mean, she kind of reminds me a little bit of like Violet Evergarden at times. She kind of is trying to like figure out people, and she wants to learn how it is to be a human in a way, and she has this kind of childlikeness about her, when she's obviously fighting alongside Freedom Parlor, she's really badass and all that lot, but when she's like, like when she goes to school and all that, she's kind of childlike at times, and just like her soaking up the world and just seeing like Shu's world and all that. I do like those two interactions and all that lot, yeah. I like the whole premise of the show. It's like set in the future, and I do like how it's set in the distant future, and it looks like there's this virus that's kind of spread out, and this, like, the Resistance, the funeral parlor is just kind of taking down the GH, is it the GHQ or the other guys, and earlier on in the series, you kind of see, like, these bad guys who are meant to be bad, you kind of see why they're doing all this, and it kind of makes you realize that, it kind of makes you think, are the bad guys really the bad guys, and are the good guys really the good guys in a way? And there was a moment in the show where I was like, oh my gosh, is this show really going in this direction? And it really, really was interesting, and just seeing how she was dealing with this and thinking, am I on the right side? Because you see certain characters who look good and they seem like good people and all that lot, and they're following this dude called Guy, who's this kind of freedom fighter and taking down the bad guy and all that lot. But then when you really get into it and you really start to learn and understand the enemy, the GHQ organization, you start to think, is Guy all what he cracks up to be in a way? Like, does he know what he's doing at times? And Shu's just questioning all this, and he's always just kind of going off on, and he doesn't trust Guy because of it, and we as the audience are like kind of on Shu's side, and we're like, yeah, why is this guy doing all this, because you think what the GHQ are doing is horrific, very horrific, but they have reasons to why they're doing it, and when you really think about it in the long run, it makes sense, and it's like, oh my god, So why are these funeral parlors taking them down in a way? But then as the show progresses, we start to understand more truths and all that lot. And that's when we get into major spoilers in a way. And I just thought the whole concept and just the themes were just so damn great, and it really gripped me in an all shape and form, you know. All the other side characters, like Shu's kind of classmates, they're all fine and dandy, you know, but I feel like the stars of the show are like Shu, Guy, Azune, and some of the funeral parlor members that I really do like, you know. The funeral parlor characters especially, like, they are really well-rounded characters, and at first they kind of come across as they're your typical shonen jump characters, but then I like the whole twist on, like, oh, they're really not. They have their own, like, they have their own, wants and needs, and, like, they have their own determination, and it's like they're not your cut out, copy paste characters in a way. And I kind of like how the high school kids in Shu School, like, they may seem like regular school children, but in a way, like, some of these guys are more intertwined with this whole resistant fighting than you probably would have expected, And yeah, with Code Geass, which I really did like, I feel like with this show, it felt a little bit better paced in a way. With Code Geass, there was so much. It had a very fast editing. The editing was very clunky at times, which I really didn't like. Like, there'll be a really sad scene, the character get an emotion, then it will cut immediately to something else, and then the character's like, it cuts immediately, it flashed forward so quickly, and you don't really get invested as much in that show. But with this show, it's very evenly paced out, and it flows really well, and I really did like that in a way. I thought it was really good, and just it really hit the spot, and I was really kind of digging it in a way. So this show is a much better paced show over Code Geass, but in terms of animation, it can look really nice most of the time, and yeah, I really did like it. The opening sequences look so fantastic and glamorous and gorgeous, and whoever sings the opening song is just, oh my gosh, it's totally amazing. The music and the soundtrack have this they feel very grand, and it feels very cinematic at times when you're watching it. Like, it feels very big, and like it feels that very bombastic in a way, and I really did like it. It also has one of the best first episodes in any anime that I've watched, because normally whenever I watch anime, the first episodes tend to be like the worst, but for me, this one, it had a really good first episode. It hooked me straight away, and I was hooked throughout. And in terms of my mixed aspects, let's get to my mixed. And the mixed, it's not bad or anything, it's just it's more negatives. Let's get to the negatives. And it's not really bad or anything, but despite the show feeling more like Code Geass, I do feel like it's a bit too similar. Like, some of the characters in the high school are almost identical to the ones in Code Geass, to the point where I'm just like, oh my gosh. And some of like the plot elements and what's happening is very similar to Code Geass, In fact, when I'm watching it, in terms of like the plot and like the pacing and where it's going, it does kind of feel more like Code Geass at times, because certain characters die who are very similar to the characters from Code Geass, and you're like, oh my gosh, the way it's kind of going is very similar. But the funny thing was that when they died, I felt more emotion in this show than in Code Geass for some reason, because of just that really kind of weird pacing that show had, and the rushy feel of it. And yeah, that's kind of it for like my negatives. Okay, there are other negatives as well. It does kind of, when I'm watching this show, it feels like a really epic action post-apocalyptic series, but then it kind of brings in the shonen, and it gets a bit too much. Just like Code Geass, there's a lot of shots with girls underage in very provocative ways, and just, it's very cringy. There's a scene with Shu and a relative of his. I'm not going to say who it is, but the way the camera is just positioned and the way the relative is hugging Shu, it's very, very, very not alright. I'm just not down with it, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of elements in in this series that it's just like, I don't know, like the way they kind of, okay, and this is more another negative as well. It's like when the girl characters are like kind of attacked, or sometimes like the way they're drawn and like their facial expressions look very kind of like it's very sexualized, is all I would say. And you gotta think, some of these girls are like 16 years old, and I'm just like sitting there like, oh, this is just not good at all. And yeah, I know anime does this, you know, Code Geass did it a lot, but man, it's really played up in this series, and it gets a bit gross. It gets a bit gross when it comes to that stuff. But apart from that, this series is a pretty damn rewatchable show. I mean, I would definitely give the show another rewatch, you know. The first half of the series is basically like Shu, you know, joining the funeral parlor and him trying to learn his powers. And the second half of the series is kind of the aftermath of an event that happened. So like the funeral parlor kind of fighting, and there's this big thing, and this is kind of like the aftermath and like how the characters are dealing with it. And in my opinion, the second half of the series is actually the best, in my opinion. I feel like that's when the characters really start to evolve and get more interesting. Characters you think are a little bit like, you know, side noted and side, like kind of on the sides, like some of Shu's classmates and members of Funeral Parlor really do get time to shine. And I'm not gonna tell you who it is. I'll let you watch it and find out. But that's really just my review in a nutshell. Guilty Crown is a pretty damn epic show, which is a teenage boy's fantasy, because this series has so many moments, so many scenes that involves this 14-year-old kid just being in a, you know, like the way kind of, I don't know, it's almost like, it's very fantasy like in a way. He's kind of the loser kid who's very socially awkward, and he gets a power upgrade, all the girls are around. It's a teenage boy's fantasy. It's very like, they make Shu so OP for no reason, and he doesn't train that much, and he's just so OP to the point where I'm like, how the heck is he doing all this, you know? And yeah, that's all I'll say. I'll let you watch it. But thank you for watching this review. Please like and share this video and comment down below and tell me what's your favourite anime flick. With that said, thank you for watching, and as always, Boy Dude Reviews signing out.